And the analogy I use now with people that are worried about buying an alloy with the recession that we're going to be going into is look at 2009, right, when it was really bad. Go to a Toyota dealership and go to a Porsche dealership. Toyota dealership was empty, Porsche dealership is packed.
Welcome back to Kim Daily TV. My special guest for us today is going to talk about fitness in an uncertain economy. His name is Rami. He owns two Alloy personal training centers in Atlanta, Georgia. Rami, welcome to Kim Daily TV.
Great to be here, Kim. I'm really excited about this.
So Rami is good friends, although he says he's still trying to be won over, with Rick Mayo, who's been a guest here on Kim Daily TV, who is the founder and CEO of Alloy Personal Training. So Rami, before we talk about fitness in a recession and is it a good business to get into nowadays, let's just talk a little bit about your background because your experience, your perspective I think will be very interesting to people that are worried about fitness in a recession.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I don't look it, but I've been in fitness for 30 years and I only look like I'm 25, Kim. So, it's incredible how that works. But yeah, so it literally started in 92, right? And won't go into all the gory details, but, I went to graduate school for exercise science. I was a personal trainer, did it all for years and years in home, worked in big gyms, small gyms, and I opened my own gym in 1999. Mom and pop, one-on-one personal training, right? Half-hour training sessions, kind of the old school stuff, and was super successful. Grew that business approximately 30% a year. Rick and I were friends back then, and we were actually competitors. We were about 7 miles apart, and we used to compare numbers. And I always tell the story. I was kicking his butt until 2008, right? So every month I would take him out to dinner and say, "I'm kicking your butt," and then 2008 hit, and to make a long story short, before that recession hit, I expanded my business. I outgrew the facility we were in. We built it up. We outgrew it. We actually moved to a double the size, a 7,000 square foot facility for just personal training. And I bought the building, and I like to say I bought it on the day the market peaked in 2008. So good business move, right? Bought $1 million building and doubled my fixed overhead, and then we all know what happened in October of 2008, right? And so I'm a religious guy, so I actually give thanks for what I went through, and I it gave me something that you can't buy, which is perspective. I went from one of the most successful personal training studios in the United States. And I, over the next 3 to 4 years, I lost 70% of my revenue. And that being said, kind of looking back on it, I remember when it happened and I remember talking to Rick and I was all one-on-one, you know, really, really expensive personal training. And he had switched to the small group personal training model before then. Of course, I told him he was crazy, right? You're only going to charge 30 people a session? No way. And so I'm a slow adopter, so I didn't adopt it for a while, right? I tried to kind of work harder and see what happened. And I got my butt kicked, but something to really pay attention to, and trust me, I know all the numbers. We had all a multitude of memberships from as little as $59 a month up to $700 a month, right? And looking back on it, the majority of the clients we lost in that recession were the 59 to 129 a month members. They all went away. My $300 and up members stayed with me the whole time. And the analogy I use now with people that are worried about buying an alloy with the recession that we're going to be going into is look at 2009, right, when it was really bad. Go to a Toyota dealership and go to a Porsche dealership. Toyota dealership was empty, Porsche dealership is packed, right? So the model, the avatar that we go after in Alloy, which was my high-end people, but I just didn't have enough of them, right? When I had my gym, was, not hit during that recession. And that recession, we could almost call that a depression. It was brutal. And for me, it lasted 5 years. What turned me around is I finally gave in after 5 years and adopted all the advice that Rick gave me. And I actually became a licensee and, adopted all the small group personal training, the sales model, everything within my mom and pop, and rebuilt it. We had lost 70% and built it all the way back up, and I actually sold it in 2019. So it's a rags to riches story, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
So right now, somewhere Rick Mayo is super puffing out his chest
Oh
right
my
now.
God. Please don't tell me he's going to watch this. Wait, can I rephrase all that? That was all my idea. It was all my idea, right? So now I'll
Rick's
give
like,
him.
here I am,
Well,
come
I
to
know,
save the
right? And
day.
that's just what he needs, right, Kim? He just needs more of that. So, well, look, I mean, I'm very, very transparent. And Rick was coming to me for advice in 2005, 2004. We were doing $1 million a year in personal training in a
Wow.
3,000 square foot place, right? Which
Wow.
was, the margins in the business, we were killing it, right? And we built that right back up using Rick's model. And that was the lesson I learned was focus on the high end, which is what Alloy does. We're in that 300 to 330 range per month with clients. I haven't heard one of them talk about the recession.
And I think there's a couple of things with that, right? So there's a lot of businesses in franchising that sort of cater to that demographic, and like there's a buffer there, right?
Yeah,
The upper middle class Americans aren't, as hard hit typically as middle or lower Americans. That's what
they're
we're
not.
saying,
They're
right?
not.
By a recession. But also, I think that people that are willing to spend that kind of money on their fitness are more dedicated to their fitness, and it's not something they're going to let go of. Like I said before we
No,
started recording, like I am not going to give up my personal trainer in a recession. I'm just
no way.
not. Like
No way.
I need him more, right? Because fitness is very important to me. Like it's fundamental to my health, my wellness, my quality of life.
Yeah.
And it for me, that's wrapped up in not just my personal trainer, but in my small group because I train in a small group personal training center as well, as my
Great.
followers know from multiple videos. So I'm dedicated to my team and to my trainer.
Yeah, and that stickiness in the alloy world is so important because that's what really helped us developing that small group in my old gym and now obviously owning alloys, right? Is that you have that accountability not just to your coach like in a one-on-one session, but to the five or however many people are in your group. They're texting you, what's going on? Get in here, and to
Right.
me, like, look, a recession is stress, right? What's the best thing for stress is exercise. So you
Exercise.
never want to give that up,
And camaraderie with other people, the social
100%.
part of it, like, yeah, we get a little competitive with each other, but it's in a good way. If I come in, on the wall of our gym, it says something about like, um, you know, train with the body you brought in today or whatever. Like,
Love it.
so, at our age, sometimes it doesn't always feel the same as it
I
did the day
love that you
before.
just said our age, Kim. Thank you for that because you look like you're about 30 years younger than me. But anyway, moving on. Right?
So, when I see like my training partner over there, doing 35-pound dumbbells, I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah,
shoot,
you got to do it.
I'm gonna do my own 35 dumbbells today. I was only gonna do 20, but now I'm gonna do 35.
It's
But that's
amazing.
like
It's
that
amazing.
healthy camaraderie just keeps us all growing. And again, it's the social part. It's fun. You've done a really good job setting up the value proposition of Alloy in a recession, which I love.
Hmm.
So you mentioned that you had invested in a building and you had this big square foot. When you retrofitted your business into Alloy, did you stay in that big space or
We
did you
did.
come back to a smaller boutique setting?
No, we did. We stayed there. We still had the large group team classes. I don't know if you remember those. Rick did those years ago. So we still had the kind of 129-ish membership, which was large 30 to 40 people in a group. We
Mhm.
also had multiple trainers on the floor, right? We had enough space where I could have, like at 5 a.m., we had two small groups going on at once, right? Two coaches with six to up to eight people at a time. So we were able to use that space. But as I know after I sold it, when I sold it in 2019 and then COVID hit, I know the new owner got rid of the large groups completely and just focused on small group, which really was the thing to do. And that's how we kind of made use of that space. But in retrospect, what I would have done is I would have taken an alloy and plopped it in there and then subleased the rest of the space, right? Because I owned
Mhm.
it, so I couldn't go anywhere. It's been such a blessing. When I sold my gym in 2019, just to give you an idea, more props to Rick. I can't believe we're doing this, but I was done. I'd done 20 years of being an owner of a gym.
I did my 20
I
years. I'm
did my
out.
time, man. I did my time. And, I went through 2000, I went through 9/11. I went through the recession of 2002. I went through 2008. I went through a lot, right? And I was done. And I love individual coaching. I love nutritional coaching. I love consulting. And I love public speaking, so that's what I moved into. And then as I watched Alloy start to develop and Rick and I were having dinners, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to curse, but mother effer, like he's bringing me back. And so at the time, it's kind of cool. Yeah, he pulled me in, right? And I was consulting with a client who wanted to buy a gym, and she wanted to buy a mom and pop. And I actually steered her towards an Alloy. And then I realized, you know what? I think I want to take a part of this. And so when my non-compete was over, I bought into her gym. And that's what I'm doing right now is I'm doing kind of minority ownership. And I want to own about 8 to 10, part owner of Alloys. That's my ultimate goal. And I've had a blast. Yeah.
Beyond the value of moving from one-to-one and lower end personal training to small groups and, higher membership rate, what additional value does Rick Mayo, with his 30 years of
Yeah.
experience in fitness and being the guy that he is, like,
Yeah.
what else is he bringing to his franchisees? Because somebody could say, "Oh, okay, well, I got what I needed out of this video. I can go start my own personal training
Yeah.
center and just, no, I can't go one-on-one. I've got to have small groups."
Yeah, I have a great example, because I have both sides of the perspective, right? I was a lone wolf, mom and pop, did everything myself, and did okay until there was a big challenge, right? And, once that recession hit, having the support of a franchise would have been instrumental. And I didn't have it, and I tried everything on my own, and I wasn't good about reaching out for coaching, which I am now. So they bring such a support group, Kim. I can't even explain it. And example I give is, my second one I'm opening. We're going to open in about 6 months. I've already hired my operator, and he owned a gym very similar to my old one. He had been in business for 5 years. He was in business for 5 years and had not turned a profit yet. Can you
Oh,
imagine?
wow.
And so he interviewed with me to consult to help him. And I just looked him in the face and I said, "You need to get rid of this. You are burning too much money. Come to Alloy. We'll make you an operator. We'll eventually make you a part owner." That guy got rid of his business a month later. That's how compelling this is,
He
right?
just needed somebody to tell
He
him to
needed
cut the
someone
cord.
who had been through it. I had been through it before. I wasn't just telling him, like, I knew how hard it is to keep a business going like that. And to give you an example, my first location was cash flow positive the day we opened.
Your
That's
first
my
alloy.
first alloy. Not my first gym. My first gym was 11 months before I made a penny. My first alloy was cash flow positive day one. That is unheard of. You know that in franchises, in businesses in general. So the big value, to answer your question, is the support. It's unbelievable. From the marketing is so buttoned up. It's incredible. And we don't have time to change that stuff. The Facebook algorithm changes every 8 minutes. We don't have time to track all that. They do all that for you, from the hiring to the support of that to how to set things up, to the training, everything, and then ongoing. We meet with their top guys, every month on my first one, to check numbers and have KPIs. And that's not to, like, yell at us. It's to help us. Like, if they see
Mhm.
blind spots, they help us with it. And this is what you need to do. And just having that support group, it's unbelievable. It is so
Mhm.
great. And that's from a guy who likes to do things himself, right?
Mhm.
So that I'm okay with that and I see the value in that. And that's when I talk to people who have owned gyms before, I tell them how I would never go back to doing a mom and pop. Not in a million years. This is the only way I would do it. Yeah.
So, Rami, before, I know lots of times people that are watching this video, they're thinking about a franchise. Now we've kind of helped them see past maybe their fears over a recession. Can I open a fitness business? I think this is a very, very viable option. Do you think that an Alloy personal training center studio can be opened with someone who maintains a full-time job, or
Mhm.
do you recommend that owners be more owner operator in this model?
I think both work. I really do. And I've seen both work, right? So it's not one that you have to be there 24/7 because Alloy is so good about helping you find that operator, right? So the operator is your most important person in the gym. You get a good one, and then you compensate that person accordingly, right? Like make them either feel or actually be an owner, and they're going to take care of that place like you would. Now, I don't believe in true absentee ownership. I think that's like owning Starbucks stock, right? I think
Right.
that if you're going to own one of these, you're going to want to at least stop in once a month or get on a Zoom or,
Get a workout in.
get your workout in, check your P&Ls, but you don't need to be there every day. So I think I'm doing both, right? So my first one, my partner is an owner operator. She's coaching, she's there every day. My second one, he's a very successful real estate guy in Atlanta. And once we get it up and running, he just wants his monthly report and his monthly dividend check. That's it. Like he might show up and work out once a month or something, and they're both going to do fantastic. And again, it's all about finding the operator and just getting back to the support question. Alloy absolutely helps you do that, and they help you find your coaches and your operator, and that's really so. I think you can do both. You really can. Just depends on where you are.
Right. I think you've made a great case for fitness in a recession, especially the Alloy Personal Training Studio Fitness franchise.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for sharing what you know. And I want to just go back one last thing before we wrap this up. We sort of slipped out, and I didn't stop and say what, but it did not fall on deaf ears that already in this uncertain economy,
Yeah.
you open from day one cash flow positive. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Guys, that's the conversation. That's where the conversation begins with the development team at Alloy Personal Training. What does it cost to open a studio? That's where the conversation begins. What kind of money can you make? That's where the conversation goes
Right.
as you begin your franchise due diligence process. So, Rami, thank you so much for puffing up Rick Mayo's chest today, because I know he's going to love this video.
No, I love it. Well, it's so great to meet you, Kim. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. For all of those who are inspired by this conversation, if you are ready to begin your investigation into an Alloy personal training franchise or any other business, you know that I want to be your daily coach. Please follow the email on the screen right now or email me directly at inquire@kimdaly.tv. That's inquire@kimdaly.tv. And until next time, my name is Kim Daly, and I want to be your daily coach.